So welcome to the Art and Environmental Activism Breakout Group. We're here today to generate a conversation on how women and youth are reacting and taking action in the changing climate. Through this short discussion, we want to learn from the experiences of our three guests here, Janine, Karen, and Nicole. Thanks again for coming here, who are leading environmental artists and activists and women in changing climates. In this brief discussion, we want to explore how they work, how it engages and problematizes current environmental and social issues that we face. Finally, we want to learn from them as young women and activists that we are, and as we continue our own work on these critical issues. I was just wondering if you had anything to add on your introductions, on your bios. You have some time if you want to add anything that we could have forgotten while we introduce you. Karen, Nicole, Janine.
Well, I would just add that with the, I call them wearable botanicals that I did, my aim was always to take it to the streets. It wasn't necessarily to show this in a gallery because the garments themselves were actually made out of flowers and leaves. They wouldn't last. So I would make them crazily the day or the few days before, and then we'd head out to the streets. So I had some interesting experiences with that. And they taught me a lot, actually. And it's something that I still want to do more of. But I'm getting more and more afraid of doing because doing stuff on the streets is more difficult now, right? So needing permits and all of that kind of stuff. I did it totally guerrilla style. So, but I would definitely like to see more of that engaging the public directly. That's, I think, a good way to approach this subject.
Thank you so much, Nicole. Janine, did you want to say anything about it?
No, I think my introduction's fine. Thank you so much.
And Karen, did you want to add anything else? Karen, your microphone is off, sorry.
I'll just say a few brief words about my current project, which is Longterm. I will be having a solo show at the Tacoma Art Museum, which will involve a collection of my paintings that were started in 2009 and two interactive public installations. One will be involving plastic straws, which is a very common subject, but I have a whole installation that I'll be collaborating with a variety of associates as well as the public, and then also working on a collaborative video to explain that. So I'm really looking forward to that experience. It's my main direction right now.
Amazing. Well, that looks really, really amazing. All of your work. That sounds incredible. I love to see them myself. To keep going with the breakout room. Also, I forgot to introduce myself. So I'm Helen Hayek and part of the podcast team that we've met. So I'm gonna keep going with the breakout room. So I was wondering, I'd like to start this discussion also by asking you guys to respond to our little poll questions. It's through Mentimeter. We're gonna drop the link in the chat. You can just click on it and easily access to it. Just 2-3 questions to ask you. I mean, you will see, but it's to reflect on what environmental art is and what it means to you. I don't know if you can see it in the chat. I'm gonna put it just right now, otherwise up again. And let me find it. It's through Mentimeter. It's very easy to.
You mean the questions that you have in the chat here? So number 2, current issues or barriers to sustainability?
No, it's so the first question, I don't know, technical things. I'm really good with that. But now, okay, I got the link. And I'm back. Voilà, sorry for the little break. So let me know if you can access it in the chat, if everything works fine. You can also answer on the chat as well if it doesn't work. Just let me know.
I was supposed to click on it and it opens?
And then what do we do with that?
So it's like a poll. It's a small questions you can answer.
Oh, I see.
Amazing.
So do you want us to write an answer in there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Okay.
If it's not easy for you, don't worry. Just write anything in the chat. Like we've got.
Okay.
For those who can't access it, so the question was, so what is environmental art and what forms can it take? So according to you. And the second one was, why do we need environmental art?
Okay, well, might be easier to just talk than have to type it in.
Yeah, true. Yeah. Let me know what you think. So if anyone also guests or participants, anyone, if you wanna share with us your answer, feel welcome to.
Yeah, because the first question of what is environmental art? How does it manifest itself? I mean, one of the big things for me is working with natural materials. So that doesn't get spoken about very much, because you can just work with natural materials and it's not related to the environment. But in my work, I want it to relate to the environment, because I'm trying to establish a relationship with nature so that people can see natural materials as part of themselves, that we are part of the ecosystem. So we're natural beings also. So I think that one of the things that we is a challenge for environmental subject matter in general is the fact that we see ourselves as separate from the natural world. So we see us as humans, and the natural world is over there, and the natural world is something that is a resource for us, instead of the fact that we are nature. We're biological, we're natural, and if the planet doesn't keep living, neither do we.
Thank you so much, Nicole. If anybody else wants to react, I can also share my screen with you as well in the meantime, to show you a few answers.
Yeah, Elena, just to let you know, I tried typing in something very short for the answer, and then it said go to the next one, and it's saying please wait for the presenter to show the next slide.
I'm having that as well.
Yeah,
The same.
So I don't know, I would suggest that we just talk instead of waiting for I'd like to hear other people's opinions.
Yeah, I agree. So if anybody else wants to share, sorry for that, wants to share their idea or write in the chat as well, let me know. Or you can just feel free to open your microphone.
I could share something. This is Kate. Because I have to leave early. I love hearing what each of you three are doing and have done. The piece that we haven't spoken to yet is writing. And so I'm not a big artist, like I would say, like you all, it's not my whole life. But I'm involved in neighborhood activism in my city. And so I've combined environmental themes with short stories and art that look like they're written for families and children, but it's really guerrilla because it's presenting those themes in a way that parents often learn, adults often learn well through their children. And we've printed them as story walks with 12 different pieces along routes in the neighborhood and encourage people to come out and read them. But so that's a particular example that I'm excited about. But I wanted to bring in the piece about writing and then the combination of possibilities.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, I can tell you one way that I use writing. I have been asked to write essays for a variety of places. One is the Stanford University Mahab blog. It's an environmental blog. And I've always had a secret desire to write more. Can't do it all, but it provided an opportunity for me to express myself in words, which is usually a visual artist's worst nightmare. They don't want to write artist statements or anything, but I actually like having that outlet. So you can find a few of those writings on the Millennial Alliance for Humanity and the Biosphere blog at Stanford University. So I really liked hearing about your project as well.
Yeah, I specifically enjoyed hearing about the fact that obviously art is in the form of many different things and manifests itself within photography, writing, et cetera, et cetera. And I specifically love that you mentioned that because I feel like different art forms, when they're creative in terms of sculptures or paintings or fashion, it can be interpreted in so many different ways. Whilst I feel like writing is more direct and kind of easier to understand, gets more to the point. And specifically within activism, obviously words, posters, writing is used to get their points across. So I think it's very important that you mentioned that.
Thank you so much, Shannon. Yes, I also have Sally saying to everyone on the chat, nature is a source of inspiration, like creativity, spirituality, analogies, etc. Appreciation of nature. One can invite people to 102 spiritual walk and write poem, draw ideas, and have meaning for you. It's also another example of what art can have the form of, can take the shape of. I can share with you just a few answers that some of you have written in the Mentimeter while it was working for the first one. So I have, so for what is environmental art, what forms can it take? So work with natural materials. Somebody writes art that encompasses the environment and our nature in a respectful and sustainable way. Art that teaches, inspires, raises awareness. Through music, writing, so we have the writing again, visual art, including combinations of them. That's all very interesting answers. Thank you so much. There's one saying, environmental art is art that promotes sustainable vision of the world, helps show what the world should aim to be, and can be in many forms, both 2D and 3 dimension, and can be accessible to all. I think that's a very interesting way of answering to this question and see what art can take the shape of. So just to ask you as well, what do you think, why do we need art in our daily life as well? Like, is there any other ideas that you could think of? What do you think?
Well, I think that art's really important in our daily life because, you know, the one thing that we're relying on a lot in the environmental movement is science. And science, of course, has a huge, huge part to play. But science is not dealing generally with all the other aspects of human beings, which are their emotions, their consciousness, their all of these things. So I think that art is absolutely necessary because for us to tackle environmental issues, we have to think of how, you know, the other aspects, a more holistic approach. In our world right now, it seems that things are very divided. You're in one camp or another, you're a professor of this or you're a da-da-da. And art helps bridge those gaps. And I think also because it's more public in the sense that the idea of art is to engage with the public, then we're inviting ordinary people into this sphere instead of just people in our little cubicles, right? So I think for me, that's why I keep doing it.
Thank you so much, Nicole. Does everybody else?
Add on to what Nicole just said, I believe I agree completely about how it bridges the gap between people within our community. Most people are obviously visual learners. So it's an easy way for them to access information or to potentially see something that's happening in the world. I recently went to the Expo 2020 in Dubai and like saw all their like sustainability different pavilions, and most of them were very artistic in the respect that it allowed children to even understand what was happening. So that's why I think art is important, because it just again bridges the gap not only between people and different cultures, different backgrounds, but also between different ages. And yeah.
Yeah, I'll just say that my partner is a environmental toxicologist, and he has to do presentations about the issues that he's working on, and he often has trouble. Well, not trouble. Some of the information can be kind of dry, and so he's always looking for visuals that can elucidate what the issue is. So we once collaborated on a project for a surge project called Welcome to the Plastosphere, and which he provided the science, and I provided with a group of other artists some visuals made out of recycled plastic bottles. So I think that those two go hand in hand, and it's really important. I also think I kind of feel like the question is so obvious, I don't know how to answer it. It's like, yeah, we need art. It's how I spend my whole life. And if I didn't believe that, I guess that would be a little bit of a loss. But yeah, I mean, it just bridges. It's a strong way to communicate. And I have to say, it's my best way of communicating. It provides an opportunity for my ironic sense of humor, as well as my powers of observation to come through. And I think everyone owes it. Personally, I think we all owe it to the planet and to society and to the animals to show up with our best skills.
Yes.
Thank you so much, Karen. Yeah, completely. I completely agree with you. I was thinking now if you could, each of you maybe, because you already talked a little bit, Nicole, for example, about the desertification issues you've witnessed and your project in short movies, Nicole, with the plastic pollution, and you work with the plastispheres or else. Janine, same with, you tackle the issue of fashion that you've witnessed. If maybe each of you could talk a bit about your current or past works that tackle environmental issues and which ways you're trying to raise awareness. If you could tell us a bit more about this. I don't know who wants to start.
I'll go first. Yeah, so with a project that I'm doing now, which is film, which is a whole new genre for me. So there's a huge, huge learning curve. I am trying to tackle the issues through short films that show protagonists that are surviving in one of these environments. So surviving in a flood, surviving in a desert, surviving in a fire. And what I'm trying to do is show how they are surviving, and that they're surviving because of their ingenuity. They're making their own clothes out of the plant material they're finding. They're eating the plants, that their sort of ancient knowledges are brought back to help them survive. I imagine a future where these things have already happened. So, and I have them as soul survivors because to me that's sort of more interesting and more poignant. But and also don't have the money to have like a big film where there's 20 actors. So I wish I could write, because I keep telling myself, oh my God, I could just write this story and and I could put in whatever I want. It would cost anything. But the idea of that is basically to try and give another option to what we're getting from Hollywood about disasters, about the apocalypse. All of these things are they're very negative, and I think that they are not helping us in moving forward, because I do think that people humans are very ingenious, and we invent a lot of things, and we can do this. It's just that that part is not emphasized enough in our society. We tend to look more at the big headlines than the negative things, which of course are real. And but I just want to sort of counteract that somewhat. And it's difficult because it's like that road isn't paved. There isn't a lot of support for that, because you can easily be seen as being mamby-pamby, or not realistic, or it can fall into, there's pitfalls along the road. So and people can see it as greenwashing. In my case it wouldn't be, but those are all pitfalls that are there along the road.
Thank you so much, Nicole. Is Karen or Janine wants to share a little bit with us?
Sure. Along the lines of what Nicole was saying, is I think that some of the barriers that I encounter is part of the makeup of human nature. I think that part of what we're dealing with is the concept of making a paradigm shift in how people think. And, when you come up against, people's inability to change, desire to change in the face of adversity, they just want to keep doing what they were always doing because they feel safe that way. There's certain kind of obliviousness. I think that humans have a huge inability to be wrong. They'll do anything they can to not be wrong. So there's a certain aspect of some environmental art that kind of crashes people over the head with it, and then they just run screaming for the hills because they don't want to hear about it anymore. So the technique that I use, which I sort of stumbled upon, but it's just really part of my nature, is to use humor combined with the dark undercurrent to lure people in, to try to subvert that unwillingness to see what's going on. And it does have an effect. I mean, I do it because I need to do it, but I have gotten feedback from people that it does change what their habits. But I also think that obliviousness and unwilling to change, no matter in the face of anything, it surprises me how people I know just still keep doing the same thing and throw up their hands. So I feel like my job is just keep having at it. And as the the person who started the Sierra Club in the United States, David Brower, says, have fun saving the world, otherwise you're just going to depress yourself. I think the world needs that. I think the world needs a little positivity and uplifting in the midst of the sense of looming disaster, because it's just very oppressive. So, so you can see in the background a couple of my paintings. Those are two paintings in the Unnatural Disaster series, which sort of depict that idea. One is a McDonald's cup that says Coca-Cola on it, McDonald's, and it says Arctic Home with some frolicking polar bears, which is like, just in itself to me is so freaking ironic and stupid. And to find it on the beach, you know, in the context of this, what's going on in our world is just too much. So I've embraced some of my pattern design love when I was working with textiles, to replace the natural world background with patterns that reflect the disasters. So the polar bear cup has sort of like fracturing shapes at the bottom that kind of represent fracturing ice, with oil derricks drilling oil and sort of spilling oil in the background. So it's kind of subliminal. And the other one is a Soba Tsunami soda pop bottle that's swirling around in sort of a Japanese inspired current shape. And that one's called Pop Seismology. So that's a little taste of one of my current endeavors. I'm making at least 5 in this series, and there's one more to go.
I'd like to ask about the greenwashing that you were talking about, and how you, that's Janine?
Oh, me? Sorry.
Yes, you.
Greenwashing in what respect? In terms of
Well, you mentioned that in your in your introduction, and it's a concern that I have too, because I see it all around me. So as an artist, not only am I fighting people that are not wanting to change, you know, as Karen was saying, but also that I see commercial businesses just jumping on this bandwagon and putting green on everything, and yeah, so you probably have more experience with that. I'd be interested to
Yeah,
hear.
of course. So in terms of like different brands, a lot of brands like Zara, H&M, they tend to label most of their products as shifting towards more sustainable, as in like using recycled cotton or recycled polyester. And at the fashion show that I like work with, St. Andrew's Charity Fashion Show, we interviewed this one guy from Changing Markets. It's like a textile organization which talks about like sustainable fashion, what textiles are actually sustainable and which ones aren't. And what I found particularly interesting was that recycled polyester is in fact not sustainable. It's taking like water bottles and making them into clothes, which to a degree, yes, that is a good thing because we are getting rid of waste that would otherwise go to landfills. But recycled, like water bottles should be made into water bottles and clothes should be recycled into clothes. Because when you're taking one product and making it into another, the energy intensive technology that has to be made and used to recycle products, which are mixed products, is very unsustainable. So in that respect, the fashion industry, like one full truck of clothes, like garbage truck, maybe like every 5 seconds, filled with clothes is dumped into a landfill. Instead of that happening, clothes should either be donated or recycled into clothes rather than taking another industry's waste and making that into clothes. So that's an element of greenwashing, as well as just like the social impacts of how all these brands are like, oh, we're very transparent, we work towards human rights, etc. And then you hear all these stories about how they're not actually doing that. and their supply chains are very much unregulated. So that's the main issue within the fashion industry, I think, and that's something that we have to work on. And I think a brand which is particularly really good with the products that they use is Pangea, because they use like really cool technology innovations of fashion that can be easily recycled and that are plant-based, as well as like even Patagonia with their jackets, how they're, once you buy them, they basically guarantee you to last them a lifetime, in the respect that if they're damaged, you can bring them back to Patagonia and they'll fix it for you for free. So it's aspects like that which are very important to implement, and also just kind of decreasing the amount of clothes that are produced. Like Zara has around like 23 different clothing lines every year, instead of like the 4 that existed 30 years back.
Yeah.
We used to wear minimal clothing, and now that it's so affordable, we buy so many clothes, when to a degree, why do we need this many clothes? I don't know if I'm making sense, but
Oh, you're making sense to me. Absolutely. Those are things that I've been very interested in for a very long time. But the aspect of greenwashing to me is also the fact that, you know, we are a capitalist society. So I think deep down, what people are afraid of is they're afraid of losing income, and they're afraid of having to pay so much more for everything. That's why they're buying cheap polyester in the first place, right? So it's like the commercial industries are seeing that, and they go, well, okay, well, we can slide right into this, and we'll sort of be on both sides and still be able to produce. Like the idea of producing more things from polyester and making, you know, using bottles and stuff like that.
absolutely. And that's why I think there should be more transparency and education within these industries of what is sustainable and what isn't, and what is being greenwashed, and potentially educating people on boycotting these brands that are, you know, engaging in unsustainable measures, and possibly moving to clothing brands like Patagonia, Pangea, which are more like expensive, obviously, but will last you a longer time period. And it's all about, I mean, like even in like the energy sector and all these different places other than art, it's all about investment into the sectors to bring down the overall price. So once people start investing more into these new innovative type of clothing, fabrics, textiles, their price will actually shift lower sooner or later. So it's all about kind of just educating yourself on what you're buying and what's happening in the world and what isn't transparent. So I couldn't agree more with you. I mean, affordability is such an aspect in our capitalist system, but that's where it's super flawed, and where we as humans need to shift our behavior and shift where we place our money. If that makes sense.
Oh, absolutely. Yes, absolutely. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Jen. That's very, very interesting, very deep as well, deep thoughts. Because I think the breakout room might be ending soon. Would you like to address, 3 of you, a few words on how can young women nowadays could be more active? We talked about tackling greenwashing. What else could we do today to tackle these issues, maybe to raise awareness around us? What do you think, with the help of art, of course?
Well, I don't know. I mean, I'm not a young woman anymore. Excuse me, as my voice broke. So sometimes I despair, and sometimes I'm hopeful. So I think that we're trying to, I think the best bet is to try and raise awareness with younger people so they can change their parents. Because as you're talking about before, about, you know, people basically talking with their dollars, what they put their money behind. You know, the people of the older generation are the bigger earners and the bigger spenders. So anyways, that's cutting off in 54 seconds. I gotta stop. Okay, so next.
I would just like to add that I just think it's important to create a platform for everyone. Specifically in my organization, we have an award for young designers in the UK that we kind of closed in 2019, but we're bringing back. I hope the breakout room won't kick me out, but I think it's just important to empower women into different forms of art by creating those platforms for them.
Yes, absolutely.
Thank you so much. And Karen, the last words of the breakout room.
Follow your passion, speak up in whatever form it takes, to be brief.
You got 6 more seconds.
2 and 1.